It's time for the Douglas Coleman Show. Mr. Smooth and Savvy is joined by guests from all walks of life, from the entertainment industry to authors to political and social commentators, the famous and not so famous, the controversial and the light and fluffy. We have it all. Now, here's Douglas Coleman.
Okay, please welcome to the Douglas Coleman Show, Dr. Helen Caldicott. Hello, Doctor. How are you?
Very well, thank you, Douglas.
Well, thank you for coming on the show. I also appreciate you getting up early. I know you're in Australia. It's about 8 o'clock in the morning there?
7 o'clock in the morning.
7, okay.
Yep, early for me. Yes,
yes, I wouldn't be very good doing an interview at 7 a.m., so I appreciate you being up early for this. You're here to talk about your book, Sleepwalking to Armageddon. Now, on the cover, I'm looking at the cover, it says edited by. Did you not write this, or did you write this?
No, what I did was hold a symposium at the New York Academy of Sciences on that very topic, sleepwalking to Armageddon, and I gathered specialists from many areas together. I wrote the introduction, and it was published by the New Press. So it's the papers from that particular symposium. It was held a few years ago, actually, but it's more pertinent now and timely than it was then. The reason I held it was that I read that Stephen Hawking said that as more and more weapons are being organised and orchestrated by artificial intelligence, he said within 10 years there will be an automatic nuclear war, and I thought, my God. So that's why I organised it.
Well, I think you're right, and I'm hearing this from other people. As a matter of fact, I just had a guest on yesterday who is a former CIA operative who worked during the 80s and 90s when the collapse of the Soviet Union. He had contacts with the KGB and many high-level people. And he said that he felt we were closer to nuclear war now than we've ever been in the whole history of the Cold War. You know, obviously that's disturbing to everybody.
Disturbing, it's terrifying.
Yeah.
I got to know Robert McNamara quite well, who was Kennedy's Secretary of Defense. He was in the Oval Office at the time of the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Oh, yeah.
And he said to me, Helen, you don't know how close we came. He said to within 3 minutes.
Wow. Yeah.
This is the first time since then that the two nuclear superpowers have confronted each other. I don't trust Biden as far as I could kick him. He's an old man. He's not senile, but he's not, he's not young and sprightly with an agile mind. He's surrounded himself with neocons who hate Russia. Now, Russia isn't communist anymore. In fact, it's really a capitalist country. There's all these hugely rich people who stole the state's assets. And why they hate Russia so much, I don't know, except that it's clear that the military-industrial complex, which really is your government, really runs your government. It's not the Department of Defense anymore, it's the Department of Death. That's what they deal in. They need wars, and they are behind this. And it's a horrifying, terrible situation, and you know we live on the cusp of annihilation, and most people are they're sleepwalking towards it and not understanding what's happening.
Well, the one thing that disturbs me or terrifies me, to use your better word, is Putin's state of mind. Yeah, Biden is he's not up to the job. He should just retire. I agree with you.
No, he's not. Yeah, that's right.
No, he's just completely unsuitable to be president. But Putin's state of mind is disturbing because he doesn't appear to be quite sane. And anybody who has that kind of aspirations with their finger on buttons to nuclear weapons, that is terrifying.
Well, you know, the scientists and politicians over the years should have understood that it's possible for a man who isn't quite all there, or they say he's had cancer. He's got a moon face. I'm a physician. A moon face is when you have steroids, cortisone, and his face turns round and cortisone can induce psychosis. So we are probably dealing with a man who is maybe a little bit sick with his finger on the button. And the other thing is that America has pushed him against the wall. And he's a man, men don't take kindly to that. And he has vaguely threatened to use a nuclear weapon. But if he uses a nuclear weapon, that'll almost certainly start a global holocaust and we'll all be dead. And people aren't really understanding it. He asked America two things. One, not to let Ukraine join NATO. And two, to remove all the missiles that America has placed in all the NATO countries along the border of Russia. Now, when James Baker met with Gorbachev to end the Cold War, he promised Gorbachev that NATO would not move 1 inch eastward. But what happened was that all those little newly liberated countries, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, etc., they were all sitting there, and then this man called Norman Augustine from Lockheed Martin went to the little countries and said, hey, you want to be a democracy? And, of course, they said yes. And he said, well, why don't you join NATO? To join NATO, they had to spend billions of dollars buying weapons to equip themselves. Well, that's what happened. And so all these countries now are weaponized with American weapons. Lockheed Martin made a huge amount of money. They're the ones who orchestrated it and drove it. And we're on the brink of catastrophe now. And it's like the Warsaw Pact moved into Canada, all along the northern border of America, and, militarized and weaponized the border. America would probably have blown up the world like it nearly did with the Cuban Missile Crisis. So what we have to do is understand what's happening, that people are vulnerable, not always sane, and deal with that like a physician does with their patient.
Well, it's true. And then there's the unknown of this, which is China. China, for the most part, has seemed to sit back and watch what's going on in the Ukraine. They don't particularly take sides either with Russia or with the United States. They're sort of the third entity in this game because they have as many nuclear weapons, if not more. So
no, they don't. They've only got 250 nuclear weapons. That's not right.
Oh, okay.
America's got about 5,000, and so does Russia. So China, she's got enough to blow up most cities in America, but certainly not nearly the number that Russia and America have.
Okay. Well, I stand corrected on that. I thought they were equal partners in the nuclear arms race. No. Okay, but still their contribution or their lack of contribution to this whole thing would be significant if there ever was a war.
Well, you say lack of contribution. What does that mean? That they won't participate?
Well, so far they haven't done anything. I think they're waiting this thing out.
I think the Chinese are very wise. They've got eons of wisdom, Confucius, etc. I don't think they want to get involved in this. And anyway, if there is a nuclear war between Russia and America, that's the end of all of it. So I don't know if you understand, but hydrogen bombs exploding over cities produce huge, massive fires. The heat within the bomb as it explodes is, I think, 20 times more than the heat inside the centre of the sun. And as the cities burn, they're full of carbon material like oil and et cetera. Huge clouds of black, toxic, radioactive smoke rise up into the stratosphere and stay there for about 10 years, blocking out the sun, inducing what we call nuclear winter, and everything and everyone will freeze to death in the dark. So we're talking about the end of most of life on Earth. And I don't think people understand that. Certainly the media is not teaching people the way we did in the 80s about the medical effects of nuclear war when I was head of Physicians for Social Responsibility. People don't understand. And I don't think Biden really understands now. And I don't see anyone in the Congress really taking a lead in this at all.
Well, what do we do?
Well, Douglas, that's a very good question. Your President Jefferson once said, an informed democracy will behave in a responsible fashion. The only way to inform your democracy now is through the media. Who's running a lot of your media is a fellow countryman of mine called Murdoch. And he's a very evil man and is keeping people sort of sleepwalking to Armageddon, definitely, because they know nothing. In the 80s, I was lucky enough to have a Hollywood agent who worked with me for free, who represented Tom Cruise, Lily Tomlin, Sally Field, etc. And she got me on all the television stations in America, in Vogue, in Life, in Time, and I was able, as a physician, to describe to the American people the medical effects of nuclear war as a result of our work. And we had 23,000 physicians working, educating people the day after it was made, that film which everyone watched and which converted Reagan, helped to convert Reagan to say nuclear war must never be fought and can never be won. I actually spent an hour and a quarter with Reagan alone in the White House after I spoke at the Playboy Mansion, and his daughter came up to me and said, I want you to talk to my father. I think you're the only one on earth who could change his mind. And he met with Gorbachev in Reykjavik in 1988, and two mere men over a weekend almost agreed to abolish nuclear weapons. And so what must happen is the American people must be educated about what's going on, about who's going to take the lead and do that. I mean, I'd love to address a joint session of Congress. I used to, have audiences of 3,000 people and reduce them to tears as you would treat a patient who's a chronic smoker. I used to stop people smoking, but you've got to get into their emotional guts, if you will, and get them to understand really what this is all about.
Well, and then there's Putin. How do you address somebody like that?
Well, yes, that's right. Putin, you handle him very gently with velvet gloves. What he's done in the Ukraine is horrendous. America should negotiate with him now, say, look, let's stop this nonsense of killing people. What is it you really want? And give in to him, take the weapons away from the NATO countries and negotiate with him over the Ukraine that it doesn't join the European Union or NATO, and stop the killing, instead of sending like $40 billion of weapons to the Ukraine. I mean, it's just horrendous. And your country is run, actually, by the death-dealing merchants of the military-industrial complex, who are clever enough to have put their factories in every congressional district of America. So when someone calls for the abolition of nuclear weapons or the like, all Congress people vote for the weapons because it means jobs in their district. So we're in a very, very perilous situation, particularly in the United States.
Just hypothetically, what happens if Putin suddenly dies? Does that turn this whole thing into chaos, or is there going to be some resolution?
Interesting. Yeah, I've got a physician friend who helped me create Physicians for Social Responsibility, and he said he needs a bullet between his eyes. And I know there was an attempt to get rid of him some months ago. I think, I don't know, but I'm just assessing that the people around him are probably terribly worried. But he's got absolute power over them. I don't know. One can only cogitate about what would happen if and when he dies.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that would be the beginning of the end, or if it would be another power struggle, or the end of the right, exactly, or it'd be a huge power struggle and throw the whole thing into chaos. And I mean, it seems like it's a mess either way.
We're in a very perilous situation, Douglas. I mean, nothing else matters, really. I mean, global warming is perilous as well. That's a slow thing. But this would be an immediate thing. And I wake up every morning and look at my garden and my roses, and I wonder, how much longer that will continue.
Did you build a shelter? I know a lot of people did that in the 60s.
No, shelters don't do any good. You get in a shelter and the firestorm will suck all the oxygen out of your shelter and you'll be asphyxiated, like what happened in Dresden during the firestorms. And if you come out of a shelter, everything will be gone. It will be so radioactive, you'll die of acute radiation sickness within a week, vomiting and bleeding to death. No, it's ridiculous. Shelters are ridiculous.
Okay. The last question, and then we're going to wind this down. The thing I most worry about with this Ukraine conflict is that if Putin uses a tactical nuclear weapon and what the response from the United States would be. And that scares me, because that would be the start, presumably, unless we just do nothing, which seems unlikely.
You're exactly right, Douglas. Yes, and a tactical nuclear weapon is no different from a strategic weapon. A tactical nuclear weapon is dropped from a plane. A strategic weapon comes via a missile, but they're the same sort of thing. They're hydrogen bombs. And it would, dig a hole 3/4 of a mile wide, 800 feet deep. It would vaporize everybody within a 20-mile radius, or turn people into charcoal statues. There'd be a horrendous firestorm. Concrete and steel would be vaporized. I mean, people have to understand that this is exploding a sun over a city. And America's all set to respond. There are 450 missile silos in the Midwest with two men armed with pistols, one to shoot the other if one shows signs of deviant behavior. And they're guarding a missile. They operate with telephones and floppy disks, but they're all set to launch once Russia uses a nuclear weapon. It's sort of automatic, goes on automatic control. And probably Biden doesn't understand this. I'm sure the people in the Pentagon too, but, they're all part of this monstrosity. It's, and people just don't know how we've loaded the Earth up with nuclear weapons ready to explode. And nuclear war would only take 1 hour to complete. As the missiles come from Russia, or vice versa, the radars pick the weapons up in space, and they take only half an hour to go from where to go. And in that time, the button is pressed on the other side. There's a man following the president at all times with a suitcase, and it's called the football. The football, with the nuclear codes in it, yes. Yeah. When Reagan was shot, they lost the football for 2 days. But Biden would only have a 3-minute decision time whether or not to launch all the weapons on your side, like maybe 2,000 of them in the missile. I mean, the thing is it's been set up by mad scientists and politicians who just don't understand, I don't think, what they're doing. I have to say, and you probably won't like this, but it's driven by the testosterone imperative. Men have always fought and killed, but now...
Yeah. Now the weapons are bigger. Yeah, the guns are bigger now.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
Well, Doctor, this was
very sad.
This was a very cheery conversation, and I thank you so much.
Well, it's helping a patient with cancer, trying to make you feel better.
The book is called Sleepwalking to Armageddon. My guest is Dr. Helen Caldicott. The book is out.
And my web and
I was just going to ask.
My webpage is helencaldicott.com.
Okay, and there's information on where to get the book and things about you on there as well. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Okay. Well, thank you for coming on the show. This was interesting, and best of luck. Hopefully, we'll be around for a while.
Well, that's what I hope to. Thank you.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.